Okay, part two of the study review. Once again, let me say to you, you'll need, as I walk through all of this, you'll need up before you your study guide that is a Word document in Moodle titled PHI5100 Study Guide. Go ahead and make sure that's up and type out through, as I walk through these things, these other areas that you want to drill down as you prepare for this exam. There is just one exam. I probably forgot to mention that during the last one. There's only one exam. That exam will have in it historical stuff and issue type of stuff. So we do it all in one exam, but I'm giving you this as just a way to think it through in two parts. Make sure you think through the history, make sure you think through the issues as well. Again, let me emphasize, it would be extremely helpful for you if you read the whole packet of notes. The philosophical issues is a second additional package of notes. So you have two packets of notes each ranging anywhere from about 45 to maybe 55 pages. So open that up, read through it all, then come back and drill down in the areas that I'm talking about in this presentation. I think this will help you prepare for the exam pretty well. All right, so let's talk about the philosophical issues that you'll need to be aware of and knowledgeable of as you prepare for this exam. First of all, let's talk about worldview. You need to know what are the basic conceptions of a worldview. Right out of the gate, when we talk about worldview in the notes, we go into different ways that this has been conceived and thought of. So answer the question, well, what exactly is a worldview? We talk about that early in the notes. Make sure you pay attention to that and are comfortable with that material. You need to read through very carefully also the section on what shapes a worldview, rightly and wrongly. So in other words, we all have a worldview, and we all are shaped in these worldviews by a variety of different things. Some of the things that shape our worldviews rightly shape our worldviews. In other words, we should allow that stuff to shape our worldviews. And then other things maybe wrongly or overly, inordinately shape our worldviews, and we need to make sure we're careful there not to let that happen. So make sure you understand worldviews. There's a lot in epistemology, and here I would say absolutely, definitely, you need to read the whole section of epistemology in the notes. Make sure that you're paying attention to definitions of knowledge. So in other words, how is knowledge defined? What is knowledge? What is this thing called knowledge? What are the concerns with the normal approach to knowledge that people talk about? Know the difference between internalism and externalism. So for example, this has to do with the question of justification, not spiritual justification before God, as in like whether or not I'm justified before Him, but epistemic justification. Epistemic justification is my ability to be rational in holding a belief. Am I rational in believing that the earth is the center of the universe, or am I not? I don't think that, by the way, but plenty of people have throughout history. Internalists would say one thing, and externalists would say another thing about what's required for you to be justified or warranted in your beliefs. So make sure you know the difference between those two. You need to know something about the empirical theory of ideas. So read that through carefully. Make sure you understand what's being said there. Necessary and sufficient conditions. We could talk about necessary and sufficient conditions in any area of philosophy, but I think it's especially important here as we think through this next section: correspondence, coherentism, and pragmatism. These different approaches to truth. What is truth? That's what all those three are answering, and some of these can be thought of as a necessary condition, some of them as sufficient conditions. Make sure you understand all of that. The theories of perception. We all perceive things. I perceive right now, as I do this particular presentation, my computer in front of me and some lights in the room to help illuminate the setting here so that it doesn't look too bad. Well, what exactly do I see? Do I see the things themselves? Or do I simply see presentations of those things? There's a multitude of theories in the notes that we talk about there, and you want to make sure that you understand each of those well. What is knowledge? What is this thing called knowledge? What does it say to know something? And then furthermore, when we do know something, how did we know? How did we come to know this? What are the sources of our knowledge? What went on to enable us to know something? Those are all very important questions in epistemology that you need to be aware of. In metaphysics, arguments for God's existence, what are some of those? Arguments against God's existence, what are those? Make sure you understand each of those well. The attributes of God. So, for example, the doctrine of simplicity, the doctrine of immutability, the doctrine of impassibility. What are those doctrines saying? And what are some of the philosophical questions and biblical questions that are associated with them? So in other words, what reasons are there, biblical and philosophical, for thinking this about God? And then what are some problems that arise biblically and philosophically in thinking about God in some of these ways? How might we resolve those things? The doctrine of Molinism is another important area. Now, Molinism says that God has different kinds of knowledge. In fact, 3 different kinds of knowledge. What are those kinds of knowledge, and how exactly is this said to sort of help resolve the issues relating to God foreknowing the future and a human being free in making the choices? It looks like on the surface those can't come together. How do Molinists answer that type of question? And then the doctrine of the Trinity. Make sure that you understand how that doctrine arose, how it was formulated, and what went into that. When it comes to our anthropology, our view of mankind, there are a variety of different views. You have what's called monistic views, and then you have what's called dualistic views. And you actually have several of each of those. So in other words, there's several monistic views, and there's several dualistic views about human beings. What are those? And then what are some of the concerns with those? So substance dualism, for example, as a dualistic view. What are the concerns with that view? What are the critiques of it? Materialistic perspectives, which are in a monistic kind. What are the problems with those views as well? Science and miracles. What are the arguments against miracles? How do those arguments work? How might we resolve those arguments? What are the different views on the relationship of science and theology? What are we going to say there about that? Are these enemies with each other? Are they best friends with each other? Is there some other view that's better to explain the relationship there? Understand those things from the notes really well. And then lastly, 2 other areas. The problem of evil. What is the logical problem of evil? And what's the evidential problem of evil? Both of them are arguing against God's existence from evil. But how do those arguments work? What's the uniqueness about the logical approach? And what's the uniqueness of the evidential approach? Think that through well. Make sure you understand it. Great or good responses to evil and the concerns. Make sure that you're thinking through those. Then on natural theology, the concerns, that is the downfall of natural theology. What's been the problems with natural theology that caused it to go away? And then reasons for the revival of natural theology. Despite the problems with it, why do so many people today think that we can and should be doing natural theology? So those are some of the issues that you need to know. You certainly need to know the history for this exam, and you also want to make sure that you understand these issues as well. I think if you do that, you'll be well prepared.